and they started eating it. We know that people were eating and saving fruits at least 5,000 years ago, and they were using this as a raw food. The Mayans took it over, and they turned it into a religious food. The seeds are a bitter food. It's not something you'd want to eat every day, but they're also really powerful. There's a lot of really good nutrients in it. They ended up turning it into a spiritual ritual. And because of that, the cacao plant stayed in the culture for a long time. The Aztecs took over afterwards, found out that if you ferment it for a while, it tastes better. And they started using it as a major food source. And they would give it to their soldiers. And it's this extremely nutrient rich bean that you can take with you. You can mix it with corn. They'd smash it together with corn and peppers and make this really spicy drink. It's super, super nutrient rich. And it was amazing for people on journeys to take this because the seeds preserve real well. Then the Spaniards came along. They were amazed by how gross the thing tasted and how special people seemed to think it was. If you dropped a cocoa bean, everybody would look in and they'd go pick it up. And so they were weirded out by this. And when they brought it back to Spain, nobody liked it. So they started saying, well, it's a medicine. It'll cure all kinds of diseases. So people started using it as medicine in Spain. That was a way for them to exploit it and make money off of this. And people who didn't like medicine started adding sugar to it. And there you have the invention of chocolate.
John, I'm gonna kind of step in here because I think we're going way off topic here. Let me kind of direct this a little bit. JF, you had brought something up that I've been in the back of my mind thinking the entire time, and that deals with intentionality. When we're talking about genes, obviously, when we have mutations, these are non-random events. Evolution is mutations are random events, but evolution is non-random. So when a mutation happens, we have no idea. It's completely stochastic. But evolution itself, it's not a random process. There are actual reasons why things occur, whether it be genetic drift or gene flow or anything like that. These are mechanisms. So when the mimetics thing, even if you're talking, John, about the sporks, and you're talking about chocolate, and you're talking about all these different things, there's still an intentionality of the actual agent that is being involved here. There's a brain state that a person is doing something to do an experiment, to do something to change something. It's not like a random event where you have a snip of some kind in a DNA frag. You literally have something that a person is intentionally doing, and that is going to result in a mutation. It's not copying error, right? It's not a fidelity issue where you're saying, well, I'm having a mechanical process, and due to that mechanical process in transcription, then it's going to not copy correctly. This is something that a person's doing something, there's an actual agent involved, and there's intentional states here. Do you not see there's a possible deviation between Dawkins' memes analogy in that regard? And I'll ask John first, and then Jeff, can you kind of dive into that as well and give me your opinion on it? But John first.
Yeah. So you're saying that there's something different when ideas are spreading and morphing as they spread. There's no way that randomness can happen there because the idea is being spread intentionally.
Well, no, I could agree. There's probably some kind of randomness, but there's still intentionality. There's an agent involved there. Yeah. It's not like a completely deterministic process. It's by some kind of mechanistic means.
Well, but okay. So, do you consider that when DNA polymerase is making a copy of DNA and it screws up, you consider that a random thing?
Those are random mutations with respect to the environment, right? A mutation could be deleterious, could be beneficial, could be neutral, but that's completely depending on what the environment that it's in. That's what they mean by random. Now, can we say that it's unpredictable? Yeah, I think it is well too. I mean, if you have something along the lines of a primitive dimer because of an ultraviolet radiation coming in, infecting that DNA, causing a lesion, we can't predict that. That's random. I would be fine with that. But in my understanding, when we say random, when it comes to something like polymerase, that's just because it's a mutation that's random with respect to the environmental conditions that the organism's in. Now, but JF's obviously the biologist. I want to get his opinion on that. But that's how I particularly look at it, and that's how I've learned it.
I mean, You've got a protein that's doing a thing, and it screws it up, and it ends up building something different than what it was initially doing. The same is what happened with the invention of penicillin. You had
there's no intentionality with the polymerase. when you have DNA polymerase coming in and do DNA replication, there's no intentionality. When you have that's the difference. What I see is a distinct difference between the memes and genes analogy.
Well,
let me ask
you're personifying it in a way that doesn't need. You're getting into semantics here in a way that's unnecessary. So the polymerase did evolve to make accurate copies of DNA. That's what it evolved. Those are the pressures that
which it fails at
caused its evolution.
But it does fail at that, right? There are replication errors.
It fails at that sometimes, right?
Yeah.
So you could say there would be a personification to do so. You could say that the polymerase is trying to make a copy of the DNA, and likewise, if someone's trying to make cream cheese and they accidentally make cotapati, it's the same thing. It's one thing was
let me ask.
We're on a mission to do one thing, and they did something else.
JF, you're the biologist, so can you kind of maybe elucidate on what I said a little bit and tell me if you think I'm way off, or
what you said?
What I said kind of makes sense?
Been the state. Yeah, it had been the state of the opposition to mimetics, and I've heard almost what you just said from Steven Pinker. This idea of intentionality, it's very good educationally to introduce people who don't know much about it and say, look, people sculpt things. They create stuff out of nothing. This is not randomness just popping into a statue. It's a human with desire. They add an intent to create it. It's a perfect educational tool, but I go even further, because to me, intentionality is something that I don't consider in a strict, objective view of biology. Intentionality is just one thing that it's a feature of humans, but what if a bird had done the same thing? What if fragments of culture were to transmit between animals that we don't consider have intentions? So I say, yes, it's a good illustration of a case, but let's put it aside. The true problem of memes is that our intentions evolve. And it's not so much that we have intentions, it's that our intentions are subject to an evolutionary algorithm that occurs at the level of DNA genes. And those DNA genes, they explore branches. Sometimes they get modified that way, sometimes they get modified in that other way. So if you had a meme that would be parasitic, that would be disadvantageous for people bearing it, people would just evolve preferences for not transmitting that meme, or at least not transmitting it to their children. Now you can have actually people taking memes that are negative and trying to throw them to their adversaries as a hope of neutralizing their reproductive capabilities. That could happen, but the other thing cannot happen. This idea of a meme that would be sustainable through evolution and that would systematically kill its host, that doesn't work, because DNA keeps evolving. Now I say more than this. I say more than a meme just cannot kill you. I say, in fact, your brain has evolved to have intentions in a certain shape with certain preferences. You like stuff that is sweet. Your ancestors may never have eaten a mango, but you may be the first European person, white person, to have a mango in his hand, and yet your brain already knows that it's good, because your brain has already generalized the idea that sweetness is good, whether it's from a mango or an apple, it doesn't matter. Now, the same applies to memes. When an idea comes in the brain of a parent, and the parent is pondering, do I transmit that to my children? All sorts of emotions rise up. Just like the way we like sweetness, our brain generalizes across dimensions that we barely understand. Why don't we understand much? Because psychology sucks. And in fact, I would say the entire field that is described by John Eyre as cultural evolution and cumulative cultural evolution, this field has never led to predictions of any kind. At least the biologists have the theory of evolution, which has explained the branches of life of things that exist in our face. But these thinking of memes in terms of a replicator has never led to any sort of insight. And so that's why I say there has to be a problem with memes.
That's because you haven't read the literature.
Okay. All right. Well, you can tell us examples just after I'm finished. All I will say is I don't know of any insight that psychology of that kind has brought, but I know that the theory of evolution at the level of DNA genes has worked. And I think that in my book, I identify the difference. It's all about the mutations and how they are directed or non-directed by another replicator.
Yeah, John, go ahead and go. I don't see a problem with having a hypothesis of what we would expect if a meme is a very simplistic meme and it's going to be replicated. I think there's a distinct difference between how they're replicated. Obviously, in genetics, most of the time, through a parent and child, it's going to be a vertical gene transmission. The thing with memes is that they're horizontal. They're spread out over multiple different what I guess branches, if you want to call it, maybe some kind of phylogenetic thing, but it's going to be over more of a horizontal means. But if we wanted to make a hypothesis and say that this particular meme is going to be spread throughout the cultures because it's a very, very simplistic meme, okay, fine. We could probably test something along those lines empirically. But to what avail? What good would it do? Is there anything more complicated than that, John, that we can actually test for? And there have been studies to show that, okay, a more sophisticated meme will propagate through a society to be tested empirically like that?
Well, so what's the study of cultural evolution has really just recently, like within the past 15 years, become testable in the laboratory. So for a long time, people were just using it to look at cultures, just like evolution was just used to look at organisms and then kind of come up with an idea as to how this feature evolved or that feature evolved. So for a long time, people were using cultural evolution in that same kind of rudimentary way. But recently, we have gone into experimentation, and these experiments are starting to reveal a lot about how ideas spread through cultures. Just a quick list of things that they've taught us. So they teach us how technologies and health practices develop in cultures that seem to lack the required science and math to invent those types of health practices and technology. And I talked a little bit about that with the igloos. I didn't go into how it actually happened, but there are many instances of this. So a lot of the food taboos that cultures have actually prevent disease spreading within their local environment, and they might not prevent it in a different environment. Or if you look at the biblical food taboos, they don't make a lot of sense now, but they made a lot of sense. Some of them made a lot of sense at the time. And there are cultures that have food taboos about what you're supposed to eat when you're pregnant, and they are spot on with modern science. People are like, how the hell did these people figure this out? And if you ask them, they're doing it because they don't want to be looked down upon. They're not doing it because they know that it's got the right nutrients in it to help their baby. They're doing it because they don't want to be ashamed of not doing it. These experiments have showed us how those sorts of things happen. They've showed us how and why ethnic groups form. They've showed us the required conditions for large-scale cooperation, required conditions for technological accumulation, the distinct functions of dominance and prestige. Those are actually two different things that we're noting that are kind of prestige, especially, is unique in humans, almost unique in humans. And then it even explains silly things like, why is Kim Kardashian famous? Why is cupping therapy so popular? And if you want a good overview of those experiments, I sent a list to Kyle of papers that I recommend people read for a really quick overview of this field of science. But one of the best ones is Experimental Models for Testing Hypotheses about Cumulative Cultural Evolution. Another one is 5 Misunderstandings about Cultural Evolution, and he directly addresses in that the random mutation thing as well. What is cultural? And then finally, what is cumulative cultural evolution? Those are 3 papers that are really good. That most of them are produced in biological journals. I think Experimental Models of Testing Hypotheses, I think that's in a psychology or a anthropology journal. And then the big people to follow in the field are Peter James Richardson, Robert Turner Boyd, and then on Twitter, there's Joseph Henrich, and he's written this book, which is great. Again, that's The Secret of Our Success. And this is a new this field is really new to being a legitimate scientific field, and that they're just now starting to actually do experiments in the past 15 years or so. But already they are revealing a lot of things about